Hello again, everyone. Welcome back for week 2 of the Take 3 show presented by Sports Media. I'm Jordan Gould, and alongside me to my right is Will Trubshaw. Will, thanks for coming on. We got plenty of good topics to talk about today.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on the show.
Yeah, I know you were telling me a little earlier you have a little more free time due to a transformer blowing up at Bloomington South High School. The voice of the Bloomington South, what are they, the Panthers, I believe? Will
Yeah,
Trubshaw? Can I
well,
say
one
it?
of the
Dare I
voices.
say?
There's a lot of folks out there, but
Yeah.
they had asked me to come on and help stream some games on YouTube for fans that can't make it to the stadium. Um, but the team can't even make it to the stadium today. Apparently, they have to go up to Edgewood, I guess. So, my schedule has been cleared tonight. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, honestly, that got me thinking about what are like weird ways that games have been maybe moved or canceled, and that's got to be up there for a very strange reason to move a game. We're not talking weather here. It's just like
Yeah. In terms
yeah,
of
a
actually,
transformer blowing up. I don't know. I mean, I
I've I can think of a couple of examples at like the pro level where like transformers have blown up at stadiums. Um, they didn't like the games were already going on,
wasn't the Super
so
Bowl?
I think it was the Super
Wasn't there
Bowl.
a Super?
Like
Yeah, the Super Bowl, right? The Ravens
something,
49ers. Yeah,
yeah, and the transformer was actually smoking. It was like it was on fire at the Super Bowl. I'm fairly certain. So for some reason, this is not a new phenomenon when it comes to football. Um, but yeah,
it's true.
quite quite interesting.
Yeah, well, a game that did go underway and did not have any transformer issues was with the NBA Finals in Game 5 there. So we actually have a little bit of highlights. We have plenty to talk about, but let's show a little bit about what happened in Game 5 first. All right. Well, LeBron and the Lakers looking to close things out in Game 6. Pretty impressive by the Heat just to get it to 6 games, but they did nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, pretty impressive by the Heat. Pretty impressive, more or less, by Jimmy Butler. The two games the Heat won, he dropped 30 plus point triple doubles. I mean, that was a superhuman effort by Jimmy Butler with a team. I think you could argue his number two was either, Tyler Hero or, Bam Adebayo. But Bam Adebayo was hurt for a couple of games in the series, too. So, I mean, a Herculean effort by Butler just to get the Heat there. But I think looking at it, this was kind of like a Lakers mercenary team. And I think on paper they were just better at it, especially when you have LeBron James. You're like already
Oh,
kind of a step above the competition.
absolutely. Absolutely, and you see in the second quarter here. I mean, this game was just blown wide open. Heat nearly up by 30 at the half, and the Lakers just continue to pour it on in the third quarter. And I don't know, you very rarely do you see a finals game get this out of hand for one team, but the Lakers really seem to come out, especially after wearing the black Mamba jerseys on our Kobe in Game 5. Didn't get the job done. But they did get the job done in Game 6.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that probably served as a little extra motivation too. Like we kind of just got embarrassed by not winning to honor Kobe, so they probably that was that extra fire or fuel to the fire. But I mean, you look at the final score there too. Just talking about the Heat's pressure, they made it a 106-93 game after being down 30 plus points to get back within 20. Kind of impressive, but I mean, as you see there, the Lakers they're the better team. 17th championship in NBA history. That, if I'm not mistaken, that ties them for most in the history of the NBA with the Celtics.
Yeah, and I look at it. Okay, the Lakers, they also were in Minneapolis for some time, and I know there's a lot of maybe Celtics haters there that say, "Oh, well, some of them aren't
Mm.
really with the LA when the team, moved to LA, but still, nonetheless, 17 titles, impressive stuff." You see J.R. Smith, I love that running on into the court shirtless. I mean, are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah, how
yeah,
how great is that? He pretty much got to ride the bench all season and get another ring with LeBron. But I mean,
yep,
yeah, you look at that Lakers team, and it's kind of cool to see a lot of the guys. Obviously, LeBron, that was title number 4. But I mean, Anthony Davis, his first championship, a guy, I mean, an unquestioned superstar in this league, who toiled for a long time on Pelicans teams that were below average, frankly. They did not. He was kind of like the Mike Trout of basketball for a while. He was a really talented player on a team that could not surround him with talent, and he's got a championship. You got Dwight Howard, who he took his team to an NBA Finals when he was with the Orlando Magic, and I think they
2008.
I think they lost to the Lakers, actually.
Yeah. Yep. So a lot of storylines. We'll dive into plenty, but I think the first here is kind of given here. Where does LeBron James sit now at 4-6 in the NBA Finals? So that's his 4th title. I mean, this is the cliche question, right? That all the talk shows talk about. But I feel like we got to address it here. Because perhaps maybe he is, in the eyes of some people, he is getting close to LeBron or to Michael Jordan for being the greatest of all time. In some people's mind, he already is the best. The 2016 title might have secured him already, and now this is just padding on his resume. So where do you see LeBron in that GOAT case among NBA greats?
I've been thinking about this a lot because it's hard. I certainly, after watching his performance in the finals, I think it's easy for people to take it for granted that, that's a 35-year-old man in his 17th season in the league. Like, he's been in the NBA since he was 18 years old. And he still he won another finals MVP, and he put up 29 points a game in the
Something
finals.
Around there. He had 28, he had a triple-double in Game 6.
Yeah,
so.
Again, I think, every finals he's been in since, going back to the Cavs in 2015, he's averaged close to a triple-double. Looking at it like that way, it's incredible. I think when people look at the stats too, it's easy to it makes it harder to stratify things like this because the players played in such different eras. You can look at Bill Russell, who won 11 titles with the Celtics, right? Why, if we measure it solely by who's won the most titles, shouldn't it be Bill Russell? But not necessarily, because that was a time when, he was he stood out from the norm. He was tall. There weren't a lot of 7-footers, quite frankly, in the NBA. So much like Will Chamberlain, it kind of gave him this advantage. And, it was a well-built Celtics team back in the day too, and they ran the roost. When Michael Jordan came in, no one really thought that a shooting guard could lead a team to an NBA championship, and he did it with 6 because he got a team built around him and stuff that got him past the Pistons and stuff, and ultimately to the NBA Finals. So I think this is my long-winded way of saying, I think what makes someone the GOAT is how much they change the game. I think you could argue that Bill Russell or Will Chamberlain, they were the GOATs at their time because they changed the way that basketball was played. It became, a low post, dominant kind of scoring game. Michael Jordan, finesse and touch, but there's kind of a grace he brought to the game too. And then with LeBron, I think he kind of ushered in this era of positionless player. Really, sure, you could say that the Warriors perfected it. You've got guys running all over the floor at 1 through 5 can shoot the ball. But you look at LeBron, even when he was with Cleveland in his first stint or when he went to Miami, a lot of times he was trusted to be the ball carrier. Even, the Heat had Mario Chalmers and Mike Bibby, 2 pretty talented point guards. But it was LeBron, or LeBron wasn't afraid to step back and take a 3. And I think, you see that now all the time. Look at, again, to use the Anthony Davis example, he's a 7-footer stepping outside shooting 3-pointers. So I've always thought it's hard to compare players over the eras, but I think it's better to compare, how have they changed the game? I think LeBron in that respect has very much changed the game. I think you could very much make a compelling case that because of that, he's the GOAT. Not just on the court too. I think also his social activism and stuff, the way he speaks out and uses his platform. To me, the greatest of all time, it's what you do on the court, but it's also, how you frame yourself, how you are as a leader in the community. Again, you can look at a guy like Bill Russell, who back in the 60s was very much involved in that. I think LeBron has kind of taken it to the next level, kind of carried that torch. So I don't think you would be wrong if you said LeBron James was the GOAT. I've always been kind of a Michael Jordan guy, being from Chicago. It's just my background. But I mean, it's hard to make the argument against LeBron. The 4-6 record in the finals, yes, he's lost 6, but he's also been to 10 or went to 9 of the last 10, right? I mean,
Correct.
what he's done, the resume is just, it's so absurd. I think the biggest thing that hurts him is that people are so caught up in trying to decide, is he the GOAT right now, that people don't step back and appreciate the greatness. I really do feel like, probably 10, 15 years from now when he is retired, because I don't think he'll be playing for 35 years. I mean, you never know, but I don't think that will happen. I think when people can take a step back, I think the light will shine pretty favorably on him. I think he will be crowned the GOAT.
Sure. One quick point I want to make on LeBron. A lot of people point to that 2011 finals he had against the Mavericks and how he just kind of was perhaps a shell of himself, just didn't really come out there and was the same LeBron that we've seen in these other finals. Now, granted, that was earlier on in his career. At that point, that was his first NBA finals with the Miami Heat. He was in the finals with Cleveland in 2007, but the Spurs just dominated that Cleveland team just when it was really just LeBron and no one else. So I don't know if it's necessarily fair to maybe magnify his mistakes. When you look at a guy like Jordan, who only got to the NBA Finals 6 times, he was 6-0. But I mean, he did have his troubles early in his career against the Celtics and the bad boy Pistons for a little bit. I mean, it's like every superstar, every great player is going to run into just a team that is better at some point. I mean, how do you expect a player to maybe rise to the occasion if they don't experience that maybe hardship? I mean, I think every superstar has had some sort of experience like that. I mean, as good as the Miami Heat were this year, I mean, they just ran into a team led with a guy like a LeBron James who's been there, done that. I mean, no one really had the Heat with Bam Adebayo, Miami Heat, or not Miami, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, guys like that, very young players to put in there and expect them to excel. Or a guy like Jimmy Butler, who, granted, as great as he's been this postseason, no one really expected him to just carry this team to an NBA championship. Well, I guess that leads to another question I have here. Where do you think the direction, I guess, since I'm talking about the Heat here, of this Miami Heat team is going? I mean, as far as what they did in the East in the bubble, I mean, how much of maybe was that an effect on their success? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think the trajectory is pretty straight upward for this Miami Heat team. I think they've got a really good young core, like you mentioned. Obviously, they're young, and that might hurt you the first time you go to the NBA Finals. But the fact that, I mean, again, like I like Tyler Hero, he's 20 years old, and he just played in the NBA Finals and played well. Duncan Robinson played really well. Kendrick Nunn played really well. It's a really solid team. And I mean, you got a veteran leader like Jimmy Butler. This was his. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking Goran Dragic, getting hurt. Bam Adebayo not being fully healthy. I mean, you wonder what if, but still, I mean.
Yeah. I mean, Dragic made a big impact for them because Kendrick Nunn had been their point guard throughout most of the season. He got hurt before the season ended or right as they were getting ready to restart and stuff. So Dragic kind of came in, took over that starting point guard role at, I think, 35 or so. But, I mean, the larger point is they got some really good young talent. Jimmy Butler, I think, is kind of the centerpiece right now, which is not a bad thing. But, I mean, I think what the Heat need is kind of another star. I think they need a second man who can really, they have the team built in a way that's going to be successful in the NBA now, where you've got shooters surrounded by a guy who drives it a lot in Jimmy Butler. I mean, that's what you need. That's how you space and pace. So I think if they could add another guy, that would be big. How much, and the question of how much did the bubble help them? I don't know. Obviously, there's a lot that can be said for home court advantage. But I mean, for every team that they played that didn't have that home court advantage, say they played the Bucks, if I'm not mistaken. The Bucks, I'm sure that would have been a big help for them. But then at the same time, the Heat didn't have the home court advantage, right? I mean, they were in a neutral site too. So I think there's there is some weight to that, but at the same time, I think it's just they got motivated and they played well at the right time. And you look at, I mean, Eric Spoelstra has also been there before. You talk about LeBron being at the mountaintop. Eric Spoelstra was there. Eric Spoelstra is probably the only coach I can think of that actually stuck around while LeBron. I mean, think about it. When LeBron was with the Cavs, he went through. I mean, he had Tyronn Lue. He had who's the guy before him?
Yeah, David Blatt.
David Blatt.
Yep.
Last year, Luke Walton was the coach with the Lakers last year,
for a
right?
little bit, yeah.
For a little bit, and then now they bring in Frank Vogel. So I mean, Eric Spoelstra, I think that speaks to how good of a coach he is. Just that he's been around that long. He's been in the Heat organization for 25 years. So I mean, I think this is just, it was a very well coached and very talented Miami Heat team. It's impressive that they weathered the storm and got to the NBA Finals, given how young they are. But I mean, I think if they add just another kind of star, maybe another shot maker. I've heard rumors they're going after Giannis, which I mean, that would be big. 2-time MVP right there, like, and Defensive Player of the Year. Hard not to want that. I think just as long as they stay healthy, I think that could very much put them over the top next season.
Definitely. One thing I want to say about the Miami Heat is how much credit I want to give Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley, especially, for as good as they are. And I might have made this point to you before, but when the Miami Heat had the big three and Wade, LeBron, Bosh, I mean, it was great. I mean, look, you still need coaching to win, but at some point, everyone knows, it's a talent-driven league, and talent is what wins NBA titles. I mean, you look at this Lakers team, and you see the duo they had in AD and LeBron, and it was hard not to believe. I mean, Frank Vogel's a great coach. I do want to give him the respect. I know LeBron had his little respect speech, but I think talent is what wins championships. I mean, that's the bottom line. And I think with the talent the Miami Heat had, and maybe against how they go a team like the Celtics, they go a team with like the Bucks, who have an MVP in Giannis this year, things like that. It's impressive. It's impressive what the Miami Heat did. And absolutely. I think a lot more about Spoelstra now than I did in the Big Three era in Miami. So that's what I want to say about the Miami Heat. But as far as titles go for the Lakers, I mean, how many do you think LeBron and AD can win? Not one, not two, not three. I mean, how many do you think here?
That is a good question. Part of me wants to say the sky's the limit because they're a really talented duo, but I think a lot of it also depends on the supporting cast. I mean, I kind of said it before, and I don't mean it as a term of derision, but it was kind of it's your classic mercenary team. It's a team that this is a lot of free agents. I know. I want to say it might have been Colin Cowherd, but like this is or maybe Bill Simmons, but like this is a team that doesn't really have a lot of homegrown players. You can look at the Heat and they have a guy like Adebayo or Duncan Robinson, guys that kind of brought up through their system. With the Heat, with the Lakers, who do you have? You have Alex Caruso. I don't know if those are guys that necessarily the fans are going to attach themselves to, especially when a few years ago they had tried to build that core around Julius Randle, Kuzma, and Julius Randle, and Lonzo.
Yeah, they do have Kyle Kuzma. They did draft Kuzma. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, but that's what I mean is like they had this core, and then they traded away to get to make room for LeBron and Anthony Davis. So that said, kind of what concerns me is they kind of have an aging. Or they have an aged core, I mean, J.R. Smith they brought on for a while, but he's getting older. Danny Green's been around for a long time. Rondo's been around for a long time. Dwight Howard's been around for a long time. Those were all
JaVale
McGee, long time. What now? 3-time NBA champion, 4-time, because he won 2 or 3 with the.
I think he's at least three. At least three.
I mean, it's obviously it was a good core, and the system they have it is pretty good, right? It worked well. All you needed was just give the ball to LeBron. He can drive, throw a lob to Anthony Davis or one of the other big men, or you can kick it out to a Danny Green or a KCP. But I mean, they don't have I would be interested to see, like, if any of these guys are free agents and they leave or they retire or something, how will the Lakers build that? Because also a lot of these guys have pretty big contracts. Will they have salary cap? So to me, that's the biggest
Sure.
disruption to what could be maybe a dynasty. And I think too, it depends on LeBron, how he does, or how healthy he stays. Obviously, that's never really been a problem for him. I mean, it's kind of just that's another thing. I think going back to the GOAT talk. Well, like LeBron never gets hurt. I think like Michael Jordan never really got hurt either. But like LeBron, like he said
Durability matters.
post game presser after Game 5, he's like, "I've never missed a playoff game in my career," and like that's pretty impressive. Like that's hard to do. So I think obviously like the duo of Davis and LeBron is really strong. Like that alone could probably get them to the playoffs. But I think it depends largely on what their supporting cast looks like and can they afford a supporting cast, especially when you're paying the salaries to LeBron and Anthony Davis. Because I know Anthony Davis, I just read that he's opting out of his contract, but he's going to re-sign with the Lakers, presumably for more money. You don't know. Maybe he'll be a team player. Maybe he'll take a discount to try and get a couple other role players in there to solidify a repeat. But yeah, that would be the biggest question for me. Is like, can they keep the everyone else together?
Yeah, I think the Lakers will get at least one more championship. I'm going to say that. I think the core, the duo they have in LeBron and AD is very good. We saw it this year. They really didn't run into any trouble in the Western Conference. I mean, they went down to Portland way back when, 1-0, and they in that first series, and people thought the sky was falling for the Lakers. Like, oh no, here we go. And then things just kind of went south for Portland and went north for the Lakers. And then you run into a team like Denver, who I think Denver played them tough, but again, the Lakers just showing their dominance and again against the Heat as well. So yeah, I think the Lakers could pull out one more, but I want to keep moving to the last topic I have as far as the NBA goes is, do you think that now that the bubble has kind of came and gone, what do you think of how the system worked down in Orlando, and how big of a success was it for the NBA?
Well, I mean, I think the numbers speak for themselves. They went almost like 172. Don't quote me on that, but there was some ridiculous number. Like pretty much like the first after like they started playing games in the bubble, however many days ago that was, they didn't have a single positive test. I mean, the bubble worked. They made an environment where players were able to get tested every day. Everyone was tested every day. That they had the resources they needed, and it looked like it got off without a hitch. Safer, obviously, the exception would be when everyone was arriving, but that was, before they're in the bubble. Once they're in the bubble, I think it works spectacularly. Now, in terms of like the entertainment value and like the viability for a full season, I don't really know. I think it certainly was lacking something. I think, at least for me, it kind of watching the games in the bubble where they only had their virtual fans and stuff like that. I think it kind of makes you realize how important fans and crowd noise actually are to sporting events. You don't really think about it when you're watching a game on TV. But like when that's not there, I mean, it's a stark difference. It really is. I don't know how much that affects the players. We talked earlier about, a home court advantage. I'm sure they notice it. I'm sure it throws some of the guys off. But I mean, definitely from an entertainment perspective, I feel like you lose a little bit of the juice. I mean, they were still great basketball players. I mean, they were buzzer beaters, all that. But I think the fans not being there, that does sap a little something from it. And the other thing is, I don't know how viable this would be if they were to try and pull it off for a full season. One, because I mean, you would probably have all 30 teams there, so that kind of strains where they had it in Disney World, that bubble, even more. Excuse me, getting a call apparently. Um, I think that was strange, and it would be a full season too. They played a handful of games as a restart, and then they did the playoffs. So it wasn't the full 82 game season. I mean, that's how many months is that? I don't think the players could handle. I don't think it would be fair for the players to have them living out of hotel rooms for 8, 9 consecutive months without their families and stuff. The 3 months was hard, I'm sure, on a lot of these guys. Because even in a regular season, any sport, when you have home games, you can, if you want, you can go to your apartment in the city and you can go see your family and stuff. So
Yeah.
to me, I don't know how viable that it'll be in the long term. I'll be interested to see how the NBA handles it come next season, whenever they do start next season. But I think for what it was, for the time we're in, I mean, it was brilliant. I'm very impressed. Kudos to really Adam Silver and like everyone with the NBA for how they pulled that off. Because I mean, it was especially when you see the NFL now, as we'll talk about later, college football. I mean, they have handled it poorly, and they're dealing with the consequences. And the NBA did the right thing, and it paid off. They were able to crown a champion without issue.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think personally that Adam Silver is the best commissioner in the big four
Mhm.
sports in America between NHL, NBA, NFL, and MLB. I think Adam Silver did a great job nailing this amid also the social justice issues. I mean, there was one point in the
Mhm.
bubble where the teams got together and said, okay, do we want to continue the season or not? And, they were willing to take a pause from their season or perhaps cancel the season, not even finish what they all came to the bubble for, and that was to win a title. Just because the Jacob Blake incident in Wisconsin, there, the Bucks, the first team to kind of say, we're not gonna play tonight, and across sports, the games were kind of paused that day and those couple of days. So that was definitely an interesting time in our country. But the bubble, I thought they did a great job pulling it off, and
Mhm.
don't know what we're going to see at the beginning of the next year. I don't think it'll be a bubble. I think the NBA wants their fans back in some capacity, whether that's right or wrong. That's up for debate. But financially, I think we're going to go back to those arenas in some
Mhm.
fashion. So, all right. Well, that's our NBA talk. Thanks for hanging out with us here, Jordan Gould, Will Trubshaw. So from one postseason to another, we're actually going to kick it into some MLB talk. We got Rays Astros highlights right here. So check it out. All right, Astros Rays. The Astros trying to make a series out of this. Tampa going up 3-0 early on, but Houston clawing back here. George Springer home run in the first.
Yeah, I mean, that's 4 homers in the postseason for George Springer. You look at this Astros team, and obviously they're much maligned because of the whole cheating scandal and whatnot. But they're still a very talented team. They got all these guys got to the majors not because someone was beating trash cans for them in the minors. I mean, there was talent there, and the Astros built that team around it.
Yeah, and a guy
Um,
that wasn't involved in the cheating there, Michael Brantley,
mhm.
nailing a 2 RBI single, giving Houston a 3-1 lead. Houston, I think a question for a lot of people was, would their pitching be able to hold up? Early on in the series didn't seem like the case, but maybe starting to get some decent pitching performances out of their staff and from their bullpen postseason.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for the Astros is that the pitching has been kind of hot and cold. I mean, talk about it.
Yeah,
You weren't really
yes.
sure like what it would look like because obviously Garrett Cole's with the Yankees now, um, and then Justin Verlander, who kind of assumed the role of ace after Cole left. He's got to get Tommy John surgery. Um, so it doesn't really benefit you there when your 3 and 4 pitchers, Lance McCullers and Zach Greinke, kind of become your 1 and 2. But yeah, they've weathered the storm and they made it a series now. I didn't think they'd go down quietly. And obviously the Rays made it interesting. They had the game tied 3-3 before the walk off. Just weathering the storm.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's a fun series. This is kind of what baseball's about. I think the ultimately we're going to see the Rays pull it out. I'm sure their Rays fans are holding their breath right now. But I mean, yeah, it's a good series. To me, it's a really good Rays team.
Absolutely. I think clutch and timely hitting has been
Mhm.
big for Houston in the postseason. We saw what they were able to do against Oakland. I think taking care of them in 4 games. We saw what they did against Minnesota, sweeping them in 2 games back to back. And then we're seeing maybe them start to build momentum here against the Rays. But I mean, there's a reason why Tampa Bay went up 3-0. They're a solid team. You look at guys like G-Man Choi have come in clutch, Randy Rosarina, who we saw who home run game. So they have the pieces, and the pitching as well. I mean, what fell there for them was the bullpen a little bit for Tampa, but overall they've been pretty sound. We saw what they were able to do against Toronto in the wild card series, taking care of them, and the Yankees really battling them out in the 5 games. That really showed me something with this Rays team, because I thought the Yankees would win that series. I thought the firepower was there, but to at least match the Yankees offensively, to me, said a lot about this Tampa Bay team.
Definitely. I mean, you mentioned, Randy Rosarena has been leading the way, but it's such an interesting group because I wouldn't say that they have like a superstar. Whereas, you look at a team like the Yankees or the Astros. The Astros, they have, I think, 4 guys who, perennially are kind of like MVP candidates, and Alex Bregman, Carlos Correa, Springer, and Jose Altuve under normal circumstances. And you look at the Rays, Tyler Glasnow has been really good for them. But Rosarena here in the playoffs, but I don't think in the regular season you could have named any one person who's like, wow, this is the man. Yeah. This guy is carrying the Rays right now. But it's always a team effort. They have so many guys that collectively get the job done and get the job done well. It's such an impressive team to watch. And they're so well built, given, they're kind of like the East Coast Athletics. They're just a low budget team, right? They don't have the resources that the Yankees or the Red Sox do, or even the Astros. But they're very competitive with these teams. And I think top to bottom too, you look at the rotation and you look at the bullpen, it's strong. It's really good.
Yeah, what do you I guess now that Houston's clawing back in it, do you give them any chance to complete the comeback and advance to the World Series? Or do you think the Rays will take care of business in Game 6?
I don't want to say never, because this Astros team, I didn't think they would make it past the wild card. That was my prediction. I thought, this is a 29-31 team. They're defeated. They've got nothing. But you also got to keep in mind, it was a shortened season. They were 29-31 after 60 games. After 162, who knows? They could have flipped the switch entirely. You look at a team like the Nationals back in 2019. They started out 19-31, as it's pretty well known, and they went on to win the World Series after winning the wild card round in 2019. So, I think whenever you get to the postseason, anything can happen, and that's the beauty of baseball. That's kind of the magic about it. That said, I don't know of any team that has ever come back from a 3-0 deficit. I don't, unless, was that the Boston Red Sox? Were they down 3-1?
I think it was 3-0. I think it was 3-0.
The Red Sox in 2004. So there is precedent. It has happened, but
very, very seldomly.
I think that was the only time that's ever happened. So that said, how do I feel about the Astros coming back? They definitely got the talent. Like I was saying when we were watching the highlights, this has been a talented team. They've always been a talented team. These guys were all like top 100 prospects coming up and stuff. And then you add guys like Michael Brantley or Josh Reddick. Greinke is still a very good finesse pitcher. Lance McCullers. It's a solid 1-2 punch at the top of the rotation. And they've gotten good innings out of some of their bullpen guys, some of their back end of the rotation guys, which is impressive. That's what they've needed. So I don't think you can rule them out altogether. but I feel at the same time, I feel like the Rays. I mean, they're a really good team. They haven't been at this stage before, so they're new to it, and that's the other advantage that the Astros have is that they have. I mean, I
Yep.
really like Kevin Cash as the manager. I think he'll be able to pull the right strings. And the hardest game to win is the clincher. But I mean, at the same time, if you're the A's, maybe or if you're the Rays, rather, you say, let's go all for it. And you just lay it all on the table, try and win game 6. I'd try and put them
Yeah.
away.
I think the Rays got to find a way to close it out in game 6. Because if they don't, I don't know. I mean, the momentum, it would just continue to go towards Houston's favor, and I'd say maybe a game 7 they win. But, Tampa Bay in an elimination winner-take-all game against the Yankees in the ALDS, they were able to get the job done, a late homer by Mike Brousseau, I believe. So, Tampa's been in the stage, and very recently, in the brink of elimination, those winner-take-all moments. But obviously, you want to take care of the job in game 6. So we'll find out and see if the Rays can take care of business here coming up. But I think we should move on, but we got Dodgers and Braves across the in the National League going on in Texas, and the Braves are up 3-1 in that one. Dodgers are in trouble. I guess quick thoughts on that. Do you think the Braves are able to close out the Dodgers, or do you think the Dodgers have a comeback in them?
This is another case. I feel like how could the Dodgers not have a comeback in them? But I don't know. I mean, the Braves pitching has been unexpectedly phenomenal. And I think the name everyone kind of knew as their ace was Max Fried. But I mean, they had Ian Anderson come in, and he has been absolutely lights out in the postseason. Then the guy, I forget the name of the man who pitched last night, but he was a rookie, and he outdueled Clayton Kershaw. I mean, they're getting some phenomenal pitching performances are the Braves, and their offense is firing on all cylinders. I think that was always kind of a given. Was like, could this offense work? It was a little doubtful in that Red series back in the wild card when they couldn't score a run until the 13th inning. But I mean, once this offense gets rolling, there's just so many pieces. You've got Acuna and Ozzy Albies and Freddie Freeman and Marcell Ozuna, just to name a few. I mean, it is a really, really good baseball team. And if they get another strong pitching performance like they have so far in these first handful of games, the only game they lost, it was 15-3. The pitching just kind of had an off day there. Otherwise, they've just shut the Dodgers down. If they get another performance like that, I don't think the series goes much past 5. The Dodgers might pull out one more, but this one, the Braves have just looked like they're in control. The Dodgers kind of look like they're asleep out there.
Yeah, at some point, I've said it. I think you got to start holding Dave Roberts accountable because the Dodgers are so good in the regular season, and they've advanced in the postseason. They have, but they're just something about it. They're just not able to close it out, or they have an off series, and I don't know what it is, but to me at some point you just start giving. You can't keep giving Roberts a pass, and I don't know. Maybe something needs to change. I don't know what that will be, but. Braves are on the brink of advancing, but you know what? If I've learned anything, you can't count on a team from Atlanta to hold a lead. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen here? I mean, nothing is over till it's over, especially with Atlanta sports. So we got to keep that in mind.
And of course, the 3-1 lead is the most dangerous in all of sports. So
of course, everyone knows. So we'll see. We'll keep following along our MLB. The postseason, and we'll keep an eye on that. But I figured for our final topic here on Take 3, we turn to some college football news. This kind of related to coronavirus, COVID-19, the little off the field issues. I mean, obviously not a whole lot of great things going on in the SEC right now. Yeah, I mean, you see here Nick Saban next to that beautiful college football playoff trophy. He actually tested positive for COVID-19 this week. It was announced along with athletic director of Alabama, Greg Byrne. And that was kind of surprising, maybe shocking news to a lot of people because Nick Saban, I mean, some people don't even look at him as, he's immortal. He's the face of college football. Arguably, he's on the college football head coaching Mount Rushmore. I mean, people, he's treated like an idol down there. For him to get COVID-19, especially related to Alabama football, I think that's pretty shocking.
Well, yeah, I mean that too, and the fact that there were a lot of ad campaigns going on over the summer and stuff with Nick Saban, and he was doing the right stuff. He was doing ads, wear a mask so we can have football season, all this stuff. And it's kind of a sad irony. I mean, you hope he's okay, but at the same time, I kind of feel like he won't be the only coach we hear about getting this, especially because the SEC right now they're in tough shape. There are a lot of cases. There have been a bunch of games already.
Yep.
Getting postponed. I mean, you see it there: Vanderbilt, Missouri, LSU, Florida postponed, and then the two head honchos at Alabama. They're the football coach, Nick Saban, and then the athletic director, all testing positive. I mean, it's not necessarily a good look for the SEC. I mean, they're the conferences that have kind of stayed. They didn't back down, right? They went ahead with the seasons regardless. I feel like they never really had a solid plan in place for what would happen. How will they do it? It's felt like very patchwork. Like, oh, we have a bunch of COVID tests. Well, we'll just postpone a game and reschedule it later, like it's a rain out or something. But there wasn't really. It has never felt like there's been like a surefire plan like the NBA had, or like the NHL had, or even to a degree how the MLB has had. The MLB hasn't. We're just talking about them. They haven't had any positive COVID test in 40-something days. So, there are a lot of reasons for why that is. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the players themselves didn't really have much of a say in whether or not they could come back to play for the season. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of them wanted to. We saw that movement to try and unionized, led by Trevor Lawrence from Clemson and some other players. Justin Fields, I believe, too.
Yeah.
But, they didn't really have a say. They kind of they had to get back to work. But now I think we're seeing the consequences of not having a truly organized system in college football.
Yeah, so I mean that goes to, I guess, the question here you see at the bottom of our screen: what should college football do after, this news surrounding the SEC and the COVID-19 implications?
It's hard because the season's kind of already underway. It's frustrating for me as both a student journalist at a Power 5 school, right? You and I both are.
Yeah.
But also as a fan, because it's not like football didn't see this coming. I mean, since March, we saw the shutdowns of college sports and then the pro sports, and then we've seen how these other sports have opened up. It shouldn't have been that hard to put a plan in place to have adequate testing and safety precautions. Maybe developing a bubble of some kind or some sort of thing where. Kind of, I guess, what we're seeing now with the Big Ten, or what they will be doing, where they're only playing the conference schedule. But even then, that doesn't eliminate the risk, So I think a lot of it has to do with how each individual campus has handled it. But so what should college football do now? I don't know. What can you do? Part of me thinks, honestly, they just need to shut things down. But that's also part of the issue, is that college football isn't exactly governed the same way that other NCAA sports are. Like the NCAA has full control over the March Madness and basketball championships, and most of the other sports. With football, just based on the championship system and stuff, how it works, any team technically could lay claim to a national championship. It's not organized. Things are not run the same way with football, so there's a lot less structure, which I think hurts the NCAA right now. But if I were in charge, I mean, like, seriously, or if I'm in charge, at least in some of these conferences, I mean, there are going to be more outbreaks like this. You've got to find a way to get it under control. I think the best way to do that is you got to stop the season for a couple weeks, and get more testing, so get more safety measures set up for these players too, because young people might be okay; they're not going to necessarily die from COVID-19. But I mean, it's what happens in between that I think you have to be worried about if your administrators or parents or these athletes themselves. I think the lack of preparation has shown a lack of interest or care, quite frankly, for these players and now some of these coaches' well-beings.
Absolutely. I think the SEC has, I don't know. I mean, since the season has began, it's really COVID. I mean, it's been there, but they've been able to avoid any major outbreaks or issues. And now all of a sudden, starting with that Vanderbilt Missouri game, it's kind of trickled down where, okay, now this is an issue you have to confront. And what are they going to do? That's to be seen. But as far as Big Ten goes, their season is set to start next week, October 23rd, I believe. Wisconsin, Illinois will be playing, and then all the other games on that following Saturday. So next weekend, opening weekend for the Big Ten in college football. What are your thoughts on the Big Ten? Commissioner Kevin Warren, kind of coming back on his, we will not play a season in the fall, to all of a sudden, here we are, the pressure. Maybe it's political pressure, maybe it's not, whatever it is, to, hey, we're having a season now, and it's starting next weekend.
Honestly, again, look at what's happened in the SEC. I wish that the Big Ten and also the Pac-12 hadn't gone back on it. I wish they had stuck to their guns and stood their ground. Obviously, the argument they make is not so much, at least they claim it wasn't political pressure, but it was more so that they understood more about the virus, and they're going to have more adequate testing. The Big Ten has relayed that there'll be testing multiple times a week for the football teams and stuff. But I mean, will that make it any safer for these players? I guess only time will tell. I look at it like, I think they had it right the first time. They, obviously schools are concerned about budget crunches and stuff, and that's why they have to have these sports. But, the health and safety of your players has to come first. And I think that the Big Ten, by going back on their initial decision, there could be consequences. I mean, that's just the way it is. I hope that things are successful. I hope that this added testing, these added measures, whatever science they understand better now than they did a few weeks prior when they decided to cancel things, which that strikes me as strange. Like, how much more could you have learned that the national, leading doctors and scientists haven't figured out yet, or have figured out yet in the last month, that would make you think it's safer now to come back. But I hope things go off okay. I hope that the Big Ten can be looked at as a model and a success story for conferences like the SEC or the ACC, wherever else there are other big outbreaks happening right now. I hope that the Big Ten is kind of that bastion for what it should look like. But I don't think we can say that. I think it's also, to add on to, I feel like it is a little hypocritical. They're providing this testing for the student athletes, but then you've got the rest of the student population and the community in a lot of these places. These are not. It's not just the colleges. There are cities and towns around these communities that can be adversely affected by major outbreaks. So I would hope that maybe with Big Ten football returning, they're also willing and able to share some of that enhanced capability and health safety, with the rest of these communities and stuff. But I don't know. I mean, and of course, as well as a fan, I'm looking forward to potentially 9 Indiana. That
would be something else if they can get to 9 wins this year.
An undefeated IU season would be. I'm sure once things come back, it's always easier to get sucked in and say, hey, it's great for sports to be back. I'm excited about it, and I can't lie, I'm a little excited to see football. But at the same time, I hope that they're doing this for the right reasons, that they've made this decision for the right reasons.
Yeah. Quick wrap up on a thought I have. So earlier this week, listening in on IU basketball, men's basketball's media availability. Archie Miller was asked a question about, okay, how has your team, how's your team handled the, I guess, the ongoing situations regarding the COVID-19 and the pandemic? And he said, look, it's up to our players. They got to know they got to sense what's right and what's wrong. Who they're surrounding themselves with outside of our practice, whether it's the training room, whatever. It's safe. I mean, the testing and things are going on. I mean, everything is controlled. But when you go outside of the quote unquote bubble that Indiana men's basketball and other schools have made, things start to get a little, dicey. Things might start to get a little more risky. So he said it's important to these players to know, okay, who you're surrounding yourself with. It's think of the team in the interest of the team, right? You going out to, putting yourself in risk, whether that's a bar, a restaurant, a party, I don't know, whatever it might be, that you're jeopardizing the state of the team. And if the team is able to, go through with the season. So it's a communal thing, thinking about it in that sense. And I think the same with football, when you think of how big a roster is there, I mean, there's so many more parts you're responsible for. And when you look at the NFL, quick side note of how, for those first couple of weeks, they were able to, slide by, didn't seem to have any outbreaks. And then all of a sudden the Titans have an outbreak and things start to, maybe spiral a little bit out of control from there, as we're seeing more and more teams come up with positive tests, games getting switched to different days of the week. Maybe we'll see something like that with college football. I don't know. I mean, that's something that could happen, but I don't know. It's thinking about it. It's not just one person, especially in a sport like football, where, it could just spread like that. So it's about thinking of the team in mind of, the whole roster. And you look at football, especially, and that's something that needs to be considered. So we'll see what happens. Of course, Big Ten in Indiana, IU football kicking off against Penn State next Saturday. That's a 3:30 start time on FS1. We'll be watching, I know for sure. You get to see Michael Penix take some snaps and wait for that one. But Will, I want to say thank you to you and your mustache for coming on this week to Take Three. We appreciate it. I know Anna and I are coming on.
Hey, well, thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Sure. Well, we'll be back next week, but as always, be sure to keep following Take Three and make sure to watch our content up on the iSports Media social media. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you, everyone.